This here is the 2024 Isuzu MU-X, and while it doesn't look any different on the inside or on the outside, it now comes with the option of a 1.9-litre turbo diesel 4-cylinder engine. So we're going to see if the MU-X does a good job with that 1.9-litre, and we're going to tow something as well. So stay tuned. If you've already subscribed, thanks very much. Let's get to it. The Isuzu MU-X now comes with the choice of a 1.9-litre engine in the entry-level versions. So that means that the LSM is available with it in a 4x2 rear-wheel drive or selectable 4x4 option. You'll see the pricing on your screen now. That's a bit more of a basic SUV than the LSU, which is also available with this new 1.9-litre, but it's 4x4 only. So it could be the right choice for you depending on what your needs are, but it does seem to stack up pretty well on price. But I've got some good alternatives to it. I'm going to tell you about them now. Right, so if you're thinking about alternatives to this car, what could you choose? If you need 3-ton towing, you could be looking at the GWM Tank 500. It's a fair bit more opulent and a bit more sexy in terms of what you get for the money, but it's also a lot more expensive. So it might not be the ideal alternative. One that might be ideal for you is the SsangYong Rexton. It has 3.5-ton towing, it has 7 seats, and it also has a pretty punchy engine as well. So it could be a really good option instead of this, or you might want to go for an entry-level Ford Everest. Now, the entry-level version comes with a 2-litre bi-turbo engine. You can get it with rear-wheel drive or 4-wheel drive and 5 or 7 seats depending on what you need. So the Everest seems to stack up really well, although it is a fair bit more expensive. There have been no exterior changes to this updated version of the MU-X because it's not really an update. There might be a more significant change coming later on, including a revised interior. But let's take a look at what is still standard. Now, this isn't the highest spec model, as you can tell by the smaller screen, the manual controls, the cloth trim, and well, it does look a little bit more basic than some of the other vehicles out there that you could get for this kind of money. Black door handles as well. So in the back you've got fold down armrest with pop out cup holders. You've also got a couple of USB ports, a little storage hook here as well, roof mounted air vents, which is great to see. And in the back, yes, you do get extra seats as well. Now you get a pretty decent sized boot too. So let me show you that now. As you can see, if you run this vehicle in 5-seat layout, it will be a touring friendly option for you. If you fold those seats back up, you do get a little bit less room, obviously, as you would expect. Let me pull them up and show you. So, up they come. Okay, so that's with them reclined all the way back. You'll see the figure on your screen now, which represents how much space you've got to play with if you are going to run it as a 7-seater. And if you're wondering, this one has a spare wheel underneath the boot floor and a tow bar. So let's go see what it's like to drive. And yes, we are going to do some towing. Under the bonnet of the Isuzu MU-X, you've got 2 engine options available to you. The new one is this one here, the 1.9-litre 4-cylinder turbo diesel. You'll see the power and torque figures on your screen now, and it is exclusively available with a 6-speed automatic transmission, but you can have it with 4x2 or 4x4, depending on the grade you choose. So that might be a really good option for you. Now, there's also that 3-litre turbo diesel, which is the stalwart in this range. It's got more power and more torque. It does things more effortlessly. And I'm going to tell you a lot more about it in the driving section. So let's go. All right, so what is this 1.9-litre version of the MU-X like to drive just in normal driving situations that you might experience? Well, honestly, seems perfectly fine to me. It doesn't necessarily have as much urgency or grunt as the 3-litre versions of this vehicle, but I don't necessarily think that it feels underpowered in normal driving. It's just me on board though, and just normal driving, as I said. It's not necessarily testing the limits of what this vehicle is capable of in this sort of situation. If you were to fill up all 7 seats, you might find that it is a little bit more underpowered feeling than this one currently feels. But the thing that I think is pretty good about it is the 6-speed auto. It is a little bit busy. You'll notice that it does downshift a little bit more to try and play with the gears a little bit more often than the logic of the 3-litre version, which might tend to just rely on the torque available just a tad more. But look, honestly, this powertrain is probably going to be perfectly fine for most buyers out there who are looking for a diesel 4x4 SUV like this, or 4x2. And that's the big thing. You can get it as a rear-wheel drive in this entry-level LSM grade, and that means that you can get it with touring capability in mind. So if you don't need four-wheel drive, you don't need the extra complexity that brings, the extra cost that brings, and also the extra weight that brings, and also the extra weight that brings, you might find that the 4x2 version is actually the better pick. Now, speaking of easy to live with, I think that the ride comfort of this vehicle is one of its big benefits. It does have a really supple ride to it for what is a ladder frame vehicle. It does have a multi-link rear suspension, so it's more sophisticated than the dual cab ute that it's based on, but it's also got a shorter wheelbase. So in theory, it has every right to feel a little bit agricultural, but honestly, it doesn't. The versions with the bigger wheels, you will notice they do have a bit more of that bump intrusion into the cabin, but the versions with the higher profile tires and smaller alloy wheels, I mean, they're the ones that I would be going for if I was choosing one of these vehicles. You've also got pretty light, pretty nimble feeling steering. For something this large, it is a welcome thing because it just means that it's easier to change direction quickly, and it's also pretty easy to park, even though this is a pretty large SUV. Now, it does have just a standard reversing camera. You don't get a surround view camera on any version of the MU-X. I think that's a bit of a disappointment. So what's it like to tow with the 1.9-litre version of the MU-X? It's going to be the big question on people's mind. And let me tell you, it's okay. It does feel like it's a bit more strained than the 3-litre version of this vehicle, which I've also towed with plenty of times in the past. It doesn't necessarily feel quite like you are driving with the handbrake on, but it certainly doesn't feel quite as zesty. Now, that's not to say that it feels underpowered. It does have enough grunt, as you can sort of feel as I'm pushing up this hill. I can feel it, you probably can't, but I'm not going at 100 k's an hour. This isn't a freeway test. I'm doing this test on a closed circuit in Queensland as part of this media event. And look, I think for the most part, for most people's needs, the 1.9-litre will probably do the job if you're going to tow up to about 2,800 kilos or thereabouts, which is about what this caravan on the back weighs. So that is a pretty decent indication of what you might want to do with your MU-X 1.9-litre. You can sort of hear the engine laboring a little bit, but the 6-speed automatic transmission does seem to do a pretty decent job of keeping things moving and shifting when you think it probably should. So if you come into a corner, you're on brakes, it will choose the right gear as you power out and get onto the next section of your journey. Good thing about the MU-X is the balance that it offers the driver and its passengers. So it is a pretty comfortable SUV to do long distance driving in, especially when you are towing something heavy. It does feel quite planted on the road, and this isn't necessarily the perfect setup for a trailer. It doesn't necessarily have the best balance setup for what you might choose when you are towing your own caravan, but honestly, it does feel like it's up to the task. I'm pretty impressed with this so far. Now, this vehicle does have an accessory electronic brake controller fitted as well. It's a red arc system. You can just adjust the braking responsiveness by turning the dial to what you want. The brake pedal feel is pretty good, and while it doesn't have the clear view mirrors fitted, I would definitely recommend that if you are considering getting an MU-X and you are going to be towing a lot, then you should probably invest in some clear view mirrors, which are an accessory available through your Isuzu dealership, and they do make a massive difference when it comes to being able to see what's happening behind you. And there's a few different grades available as well, including heated ones that can electronically fold back into place. Very, very clever tech. So look, this hasn't been an extensive road test with hundreds of kilometers covered. So, I mean, you can take these findings with a grain of salt, but I would say that if you are considering the MU-X 1.9-litre as your tow vehicle of choice, then maybe you should make sure you go and drive a Everest with the 4-cylinder engine and see if it might be a better fit for your needs, or maybe the Rexton with the turbocharged diesel that it has, because I've towed with both of those as well, and they seem to be just a little bit more zesty. Same thing with the Toyota Fortuner with the 2.8 litre. It does seem a lot gruntier than this, but hey, this does have some benefits in terms of the day-to-day livability that the Fortuner simply can't match. Okay, so if you're thinking that getting into the downsized turbo diesel version of the MU-X will return some benefits in terms of fuel use, yes, that's true. They're not staggeringly big differences though in terms of the official combined cycle figures, which you'll see on your screen now. And in my testing, which has been pretty limited, I'll be honest, it wasn't necessarily the sort of thing that I would typically be doing with a test car. It's at this launch event in Queensland, so limited driving, but still a good mix of driving on-road and some off-road, and the towing test that I did. Here's what I've seen for the on-road portion. And look, if you're doing highway Ks, you're probably going to see mainly around the high 6s, low 7s for day-to-day driving. If you do a bit more stop-start stuff, you'll use a bit more fuel. That's just typical. But look, I think that those numbers do help it stack up, and also the emissions figures are better for the 1.9 litre version compared to the 3 litre. So if you're concerned about emissions, or maybe you have emissions requirements for a fleet or something like that, it could be a pretty good deal for you, this 1.9, I reckon. And here you'll see what I saw for the towing component. Look, not the most extensive test, but still pretty representative of what you might see in real world testing. All right, let's talk about ownership stuff for this 1.9 litre MU-X. Just like the 3 litre version, it comes with a capped price service plan. You'll see the average cost for those services on your screen now. And yes, that means 12-month, 15,000 kilometre intervals. And there's also a 6-year, 150,000 kilometre warranty for this vehicle, which is pretty good for this class. And you get 7 years of roadside assistance as well. So that's nice. Okay, thanks for watching, guys. I know this wasn't as comprehensive as some of my other reviews, and if you want to see a more detailed review of the MU-X range, then make sure you check the link in the description below. Just keep in mind, it won't have any information about this 1.9 litre. That's why I'm doing this review. But I can say that I think that the 1.9 litre version of the MU-X is an option that you should consider. If you're looking at an entry-level version of the MU-X, then make sure you go and test drive both, is my advice, because I think this might actually suit your needs better than you probably expect it will. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.